No.
I just opened it up, so I see a few people are logging in already, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and get started and hopefully get a few more people to join us.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening. Thank you for joining this NCEA webinar, Jumpstarting Facility Improvements Through Campus Master Planning, presented in partnership with Habib & Associates Architects. I'm Andrea Cobb, Manager of Educational Resources for NCEA, and I'm happy to moderate for you this evening. Before we begin, please know that all of your microphone connections have been muted. If you have questions during today's presentation, please send those through the question box that appears in your GoToWebinar panel. To ask a question, use your mouse to click into the blank box area. Type your question using your keyboard and then click Send. The webinar presentation will last about 45 minutes and there will be a question and answer portion at the end. Later this evening, you will receive an email asking you to complete a brief evaluation about this webinar, and I thank you in advance for providing us with feedback about today's programming. You will receive an email in the next 5 business days with instructions on accessing this recorded webinar, a certificate of attendance, and the presentation files. Let us begin as we do all things in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Now I wish to introduce Stephen Habib, President and Principal Architect, Jack Shea, Educational Planning Specialist, and Tamara McCooch, Director of Operations and Communications for Habib & Associates Architects. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Andrea. On behalf of Steve and Jack, we want to thank you and NCEA for partnering with us and for all of our attendees this evening, this afternoon, on being with us here to discuss this very important topic. We are going to give you today, as Jack, my colleague, likes to say, a drink from a fire hose. This is a very meaty presentation. However, we're going to try and break it down as simply as possible. And as Andrea said, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask them of us at the end of the presentation. We also have our email addresses, and feel free to email us at any time. We are here to help and help you get your facilities to the level that they need to be. Now, Andrea introduced us a little bit. I'd like to introduce you a little more to Steve Habib. He's the president and he's the principal architect at Habib & Associates. Steve has spent over 40 years, sorry Steve, over 40 years as an architect and working with schools and with Catholic schools in particular on helping them to achieve their visions and to educate as many Catholic students as possible. Jack Shea has been in the educational side of the world for also 40 years, maybe a little more?
I'll give you that.
Okay.
Yes.
Jack was originally a teacher, worked his way through, was a principal of a school, and has now joined Habib & Associates a few years back on the second phase of his career in helping us with the educational programming side of the campus master planning. And I am Tamara. I work with communicating the plan and working with Catholic schools and helping them communicate to the community, their community, what is happening with the master plan and making sure all things are jiving together. So the three of us as a team work with Catholic schools throughout the nation. Jack, you want to take over from here?
It's great to be able to talk to you at this busy time of the year. I'm sure many of you have just opened or you're getting ready to open, and you've been thinking about your facilities. And if we look at this downward trend, I know many of you are faced with aging facilities, and we're looking in terms of a list of things that could be getting in the way in your building. Looking at what your building should be doing to support teaching and learning. And as the building ages, there is a decline. There's a decline in its ability to be able to impact the quality of education, your overall athletic program, your extracurricular activities. If we think about safety and comfort and that impression you have, that curbside appeal when you're recruiting new students or recruiting new staff to your building and you do that building tour with them and show them their space, I hope that you can do it with some pride. And if not, that's what we're here tonight, is to help you to be able to move in that direction and look at how it can give you a major impact to be able to improve your overall performance in the school. Now this statistic is amazing to me, and I've looked at it many, many times with white papers and all. But believe it or not, you can increase student achievement by 11% without changing anything in regards to teaching and learning in the building, just simply by improving the overall environment of the school. Does school design make a difference? Without question. Think of a student giving that extra plug on that test question, or a teacher just feeling a little more comfortable and staying an extra half hour after school for whatever reason that might be. In a comfortable facility, that happens. Now we've heard this enough, playing with words, Catholic education in need of salvation. I know that many of you are in buildings that are aging, but the reality of it is, those of you who have survived and have gone through some of the toughest times, you don't need to hear this any longer. You're here to be able to look and to work with other people to move your school forward, to think and to find out how you can do that. Now, this is a little bit of a chuckle. I'm sure some of you are thinking it goes along with the vintage, perhaps, of the building you're in. But we've put this here so that you can look at three major areas, and that's that cars today are fast, they're efficient, and they're more advantageous. We could think of schools in the same way. The schools are fast, that the style has changed in them. Think of the internet capability and all of the electronics that are there. The overall comfort of a new school is radically different than one of the early 60s. The safety has changed post-Columbine dramatically. In the car, we didn't have seat belts or headrests. In schools, there are many, many safety features that perhaps your building is missing or could use. Same with technology and a major upgrade of a building, a re-examination of that to be able to put in. The car didn't even have the 12-speaker Bose system that you might have today in an automobile, or a navigation system or anything of that nature. And certainly schools that were constructed in early years didn't have today's technology in mind. Life has changed, and schools certainly have changed over a period of time.
Two things that we would like to recommend to you before you start a campus master plan, which Steve is going to go through the process in just a moment. The two things that we find that those schools that succeed in fulfilling their vision, two things that they do. One is to think and act like a business. And that doesn't mean that you're not already doing that. But are there ways that you can do that even more? And at the beginning of the presentation today, there was a worksheet option for you to download. It was also included in an email. And if you look at that now, it's kind of an outline to help you when in a day or two or a week and you think about this campus master planning again. If you jot things down as we're going along, it will help you get started in the process when you get back to it or when you're ready. And one of those first things are, what are the opportunities for my school to conduct fairs in an even more business-like manner? We recommend that you have a strategic plan. I would suspect that most of you do, but does it include a campus master plan? Are you actively thinking about your facilities on a year-to-year basis, and are you budgeting for that? And what is your master plan? Are you geared for efficiency and success? I would guess so. Do you move with the times and not stay status quo? Are there things that you can be doing and looking at that you have the opportunity to change? And are you making decisions and your actions, are they based on your vision for the school, and where you should be and where you want to be, or are they your actions based on what you don't have? And you don't want to do that. You don't want to say, well, we don't have X, Y, and Z, therefore we cannot achieve it. Don't think about the X, Y, and Z. Think about where you should be and work towards it, because there are ways. And hopefully at the end of this presentation today, you will see that undergoing building renovations, repairs, or additions, whatever you need, they are achievable goals. They're not impossible dreams. We've worked with enough schools to know that it can be done. The second recommendation we make is to communicate, communicate, communicate. You want everybody in your school community to know what's going on. There's no questions, there's no suspicion, there's no secrets. It's an open and transparent process. And from day one, in beginning to conduct a campus master plan, you put it in your newsletter. You send out an e-blast. This is what we're going to engage in and embark on. And there are several various points going through the master planning process that there are opportunities to communicate with your school community. Your educational architect will help you know when those best are, and we're going to talk about a few of them today. But the more that you can communicate, the better. And if you look at your sheet, your blueprint for success, you know, are you thinking of some ways that you could do that better right now? And jot those down.
Well, thank you, Tam. And before I get into the agenda, I just want to back up for just a second, because Jack showed a very interesting chart that talked about facilities being critical to the success and survival of our school. The last bullet on that chart was facilities affect enrollment. And I just want to tell you a personal story that I experienced when my oldest son was getting ready for high school. And we went to visit a local Catholic high school that was really well known. And we went with two of his friends and their parents. So we had three families that were visiting the school. And as we walked through, it became glaringly evident that the facilities were nowhere close to being able to compare with the local public schools. Well, I insisted that my son attend that school, but the other two families decided to send their sons to the local public high school. So there's 2 out of 3 families that decided not to go to the school, not because of its reputation, not because of its teaching ability or the education that was received, but because of the facilities directly. And so I just want to tell you that facilities do affect enrollment, and it's important. But today's agenda, what's a campus master plan we're going to talk about? Why do we need one? How do we generate that? How do I achieve buy-in, both figuratively and literally? Implementing the plan, and we're also going to cover your questions. So what is a campus master plan? Well, it's a document, and it's going to address the need for facility improvements. It will outline capital investments designed to support your current and future programs. Again, your current and future programs. We don't want to forget that we always want to be moving forward, and we want to think about what the future will hold, what our students need to learn, what courses they need. It will support your mission and your vision and become a budgeting tool, an extremely valuable resource which provides solutions. Why do I need it? Well, it's the first step in improving your facilities, first of all. So if you want to clear those hurdles and if you want to improve your facilities, it's the very first step. It will create a unified vision, provide a clear communication of the understanding and agreement to how you want to move forward. It's a solid direction to take care of maintenance, repair, renovation, and growth. This next bullet is just so important. It proves to your donors that their money will be wisely spent. As Catholic educators, we know our resources are limited. And when we receive donations from donors, it's so important. And the more we can show them that their money is going to be spent wisely, the more success we will have in raising funds and in moving our facilities and our schools forward, really advancing us quite a bit. What it also does, the process will result in a determination of the achievable financial support. Also define that path forward so that we can implement our vision. So frequently, if you look at that arrow on the left, we tend to do random acts of improvement with our schools. Someone comes along and says, I think we should fix this washroom, or we should adjust or modify or renovate our locker rooms, or upgrade a particular classroom. What a master plan does is it pulls the school together, not just the faculty and staff, but the entire school community, to have one shared vision, shared goals, a focus on moving forward together. And it can be so much more effective, particularly if you want to achieve that success with larger projects. So how do we generate a campus master plan? Well, I want you to note the various colors on this chart. And we're going to talk about the three stages. But if you'll note that in blue, that's the school. That's you. Okay? In the reddish color is your architectural consultant. And in green is your fundraising consultant. The three need to work together. And that first phase we're going to get into in more depth, but that's visioning. And all three work together to develop that visioning. The problem definition deals with the physical condition assessment and the space needs assessment, and really defining the problem, and that's where your architectural consultant comes into play, because you've already established the vision. And then the solutions and opportunities, again, they're guided by your architectural consultant, but it's a joint effort, as you can see. And importantly, the guidance is there, and the assistance of the fundraising consultant results in an achievable project resulting from that master plan process. Oh, Andrea, I was just wondering if you could take a quick poll to see how many, where the people that are listening tonight, what their role is in their institution, in their school.
Sure, I'll launch that now.
Might be helpful. I suppose as she's conducting that, we can continue, or should we hold? What do you think, Jack?
Let's see, I think we're about done here. Seems like most everyone has voted. In tonight's presentation, we have 67% of our audience are board members and 33% are teachers.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's a good mix, and I think this will be very, very prevalent. Compiling the team, that first part of visioning, before anything gets started, a team needs to be compiled, a steering committee. And we suggest that that steering committee be no more than 7 members. It should include a board member, possibly the chair or the chair of the facilities subcommittee. Should include the president or principal, depending on the model, maybe both if you have a president and a principal. Director of advancement would be an appropriate individual. Your educational director, is also appropriate, and key individuals. And we've distributed, or you should have received an email which states a sheet, My Blueprint for Success, and it's just a little planning tool that you can fill out as you go along. Might be helpful to you as you move forward. And there's a specific question on there regarding who you would have on your steering committee. The architectural consultant, one of the important things is you want to choose a firm that's experienced in master planning, experienced in educational architecture, and hopefully experienced in Catholic schools, because we do operate a bit differently than other private schools, and certainly a lot differently than public schools. I've worked on both, and there's quite a bit of difference. And of course, a fundraising consultant, a firm that's experienced in large gift asks. This is so important because when you're done with the actual planning process, you want to implement that plan and you want to move the school forward. And that financial fundraising consultant is going to allow you to formulate master plan solutions, or have your architect formulate those solutions such that they're going to be achievable and you're going to be able to raise the funds. And Jack, if you want to
Sure.
visioning?
We're playing a little bit with a graphic here, and you can see it's SION, mission and vision. And we're asking you to make a distinction between the two. Have you thought of them in terms of the mission grounding you, of your day-to-day practices, of who you are and what you do so well? But you make a distinction in terms of the future and looking down the road, a stretch goal for you in terms of who you need to become as a school. It becomes a little bit uncomfortable because you're not there, but it challenges you to look to the future and think in terms of what your school possibly could be. That's the challenge, and that's why it's somewhat more difficult to be able to pull a group together. You need strong vision. Now, if by chance someone starts to talk about bricks and mortar and putting a new building in, that's really not the starting point for that vision. The vision is talking about teaching and learning and where you want to go as a school. The building will support it. And truly, if you have your eye on the target, eye on the future, it will come into place as time goes along. So just think in terms of where teaching and learning will be going. There's your vision. Now, envisioning, we want you to pull together your community in a number of different ways. It's really, think of it in terms of an ongoing cumulative process. And what it does is it allows you to build relationships and trust and strengthen them over time. So how does it come about? That's by talking and working together and looking in terms of conversations that can support you so everyone comes on the same page, thinking about where you could be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Keep these pieces of communication and opportunities in mind to enable those relationships and build those relationships and trust and fortify them. If you think of the types of feedback and empowering groups so that they feel connected and involved in the process, how could you do that? How could you share information? How could you plan and bring them together and coalesce and garner that support? What methods of engagement might you use? Could you possibly use some town meeting forums, some types of focus workshops where you could have hands-on activities and lots of opportunities for feedback and dialogues and questions and answers? But another real powerful way, and Tam is going to get into it in a little bit, are surveys electronically. There are so many ways that you can reach out to a far broader audience, including your alumni, reaching people that are distantly no longer connected to the school in an immediate neighborhood way, but still want that connection to your institution. Web-based engagement is really powerful in terms of social media when you think of what you could be doing on Facebook and Twitter and all other types of social media. that consensus building is where you're really going to work to pull everyone together to share the same conversation. But in doing that, you really need to be accurate, pulling it together so that discussion is common, it's shared, and it's unified. And through print media and displays and posters and all, it will really confirm that direction. And that's how working together with your architectural consultant and, of course, the financial support is really going to get you all moving together and coalesce, moving in the same direction.
You know, Jack, just to point out that your architectural consultant should be guiding you with respect to these elements and can really help you build that various methods of engagement. Tim, I'll let you start with your showing how that works.
Right. Well, this is just a couple examples of the method of engagement that Steve's referring to. And when you're confirming your vision, I mean, you've got your team together, your steering committee, you've been working on the vision, you're heading in a direction, and you want to really begin, you know, that communication or that continued communication through all of those methods of engagement. And one of those ways was the surveys. This is a survey that was done for a school through SurveyMonkey. The survey itself was, I believe, 12 or 13 questions long. This is one of them. And they believed that they needed to head in the steering committee, that is, was talking a lot about heading in a vocational technology direction and adding that component to the school, which it currently did not have. When they put it out to the community, the parents, that was not the parent response. In fact, they wanted to have more STEM, they wanted to increase the electives, and the top bullet there, where the current administration thought they were doing fairly well, that top bullet in yellow, the rest of it says, I'm highly satisfied, make no changes, basically, and that wasn't the case either. So there was some work to do in a slight redirection, the vocational technology component. It was further discussed, and it was removed from the vision in the end. And it was a very useful, very quick tool, a way of finding that out. This was another one. How large were they going to get? It was a smaller school. Some were saying they wanted to grow significantly, but found out that they preferred to stay basically where they were, but to grow slightly. Something you wanted to add, Steve?
No, I just wanted to say that I've just found the surveys to be so helpful, that and the guidance that they give the steering committee to schools is just really, when you go to this depth and involve the school community, when it comes time to support the project, they step up to the plate.
And one of the most important components to that is not only involving them, you're asking them the questions, they're providing their response, but then to listen to that response and to redirect when needed, they know that they are being heard. And that makes a huge difference in the parents, and them talking to each other, in the grassroots effort that can be coordinated, the excitement that can come out of it. They really start to buy in, which happened with this school, and it has been a very successful project. They also had a preschool that was an off-site location, they thought, and they were kicking around the idea, well, what if we had the preschool, all grades, on a common site? I wonder if people, if parents would go for that. Would they appreciate that? Well, overwhelmingly, and that was a surprise to them also. Parents said they would like one drop-off at one location and knowing that all of their kids are together. These are just a couple examples. So much can be done with this. And then what happened in the long run, these surveys and the answers were shown at town meetings in the school's auditorium during the evening, and invitations were sent out so everyone could see the response. They were also given the opportunity to ask questions, to discuss it further. And as this project moved forward, we would have another town meeting, and we ended up having 3 town meetings. And by the end, the excitement was there, the they pretty much were all on board. You know, there's always some that have some other opinion, but they understood where the school was headed and why, and they still were in favor of the school and the changes in the long run.
All right, thanks, Tam. We're getting into the second phase following the visioning. We have the problem definition phase, and this really is done by your architectural consultant. This first part I'm going to talk about, and then Jack's going to talk about the space needs assessment. But just in terms of the physical condition assessment, this involves evaluating the existing building and existing site, existing building systems, and developing recommendations and estimating construction costs to bring your facilities, what you have, bring them up to speed so that they can be maintained moving into the future. It's very important that we budget for those items that are less visible but so important, that maybe deal with the heating and ventilating system or the roof or the windows. And we like to look at 5 areas of assessment: site, envelope, interiors, mechanical, and electrical. They're critical to have a facility that's going to serve the educational program moving forward into the future. A typical example of a physical condition assessment and the costs in order to maintain those elements of the campus. In this case, there was a main building, and then there was an annex, which was a former convent. We see convents quite frequently being used for educational purposes, and it becomes a little bit difficult. But in this case, it was working for them, and there are costs to renovate that and to bring that up to speed as well.
The other side of the problem definition piece is to take a good hard look at teaching and learning and the space required, and that's the space needs assessment. So we're looking at, in this case, at not only the current but the future educational programs and extracurricular activities. So we begin to look at that through the scheduling that's going on. What type of a daily schedule do you have? Is it a 5-day or a 6-day? Do you use block scheduling? What enrollment projections are? Is it a school that is growing, stable, or even declining? And calculating the area requirements. What would you like to have for overall classroom sizes? I mean, are you projecting certain class sizes? Are there 22 in a class, or are there 30 in a class? Determining the long-range space needs and looking, will you be adding programs over time? So we'll take a look at an example of that as we go through here. Here's the school we're working with, and this is just the science area we're looking at. So you can see a listing of all their courses, the number of students enrolled in each one, what they look for average class size, the number of sections, and the sections per week, and so on. That will give us a basis of working on and determining how many classrooms at each one of these areas would we need to be able to do this. And then circled down below, you can see we're looking at future projections, adding some new STEM or STEAM courses, and an introduction to engineering. Now this would be done for each of your content areas so that we could calculate out the space, as well as some of the common spaces, looking in terms of whether it be your auditorium, your visual arts, the cafeteria, and so on. Now this one, we're looking at a growth model, and it was a school we were working with that currently is at 700 students, or was at 7. They're actually moving along now in this. And you can see the overall calculation. There's an upper category for your educational spaces, and then a lower category where your administration and support spaces are all listed. When we look incrementally going across, increasing the building's enrollment from 700 students to 800 students, we can see that the total square footage in the bottom, in the green area, has increased from 131,000 square feet plus to 140,000 square feet plus. So you can see incrementally it's going up, although it's not a huge change. And then in the case of 1,000 students, it's gone up to 147,000. So we can look at space needs in a lot of different ways in helping you, whether it be stability or whether you're looking at growth or even a combination of putting different grade configurations together.
And now you've reached a major milestone. At this point, the problem's been defined. And it's been defined in a very thorough fashion. It's understood, it's accurately defined, and it's going to form the basis for moving forward so that now solutions can be identified. And we really can get into the what I consider the funnest part of a project. We see a lot of challenges with Catholic schools that we work with, and these are some of the typical ones. And I'm sure that many of you have experienced this. Insufficient communication and safety systems, or outdated computer and science labs, undersized athletic facilities. Maybe the parking isn't ideal, or the disjointed traffic flow. I worked with a school recently, and the traffic was such that they were dropping the students off so that they had to cross between cars to reach the school. It just was not as effective as it could be. But these are typical challenges we see. And the next phase now, we get into identifying solutions. And here you want your architect to really be developing as many options as possible, because the way to get a good creative solution is to review as many options as possible. And you want to make sure those options are going to, or they should be making sure the options promote the vision, support the educational program, and are consistent with the funding potential. Now, the way you know that they're consistent with the funding potential is because you've retained a fundraising consultant early on, and that organization is going to be working with the team. So by the time you get to identifying solutions and the architect is working on that, you'll know what can be affordable. So very important to move the project forward. Then you'll see the assessment and selection element. And you see, if you look down in the lower right, you'll see that that involves the team, all three players, collectively, evaluating those options, making sure they meet the needs by supporting the vision, overcoming the challenges, they're practical and they're effective use of the resources, and they're achievable both from a financial perspective and a constructability perspective. Then your architect would compile the report, and that would become the document that you would use moving forward. It creates the unified vision. It communicates what's been discussed, what the understanding and agreement is. It provides that solid direction for maintenance, repair, renovation, and growth. It's that proof to donors, that element, that one thing that says, this school knows what they're doing. They know they're going to spend my dollars wisely. And it does that effectively. It determines the achievable level of financial support, and it defines the path forward so that that vision can be implemented. You can move your school forward. You can advance your school to that next level.
When that report is being compiled by your architectural firm, they will also be generating renderings, images, potentially 3D videos, but those won't go in the report, but images that will be used in the report, as well as images that you can begin to use to share with your community and really create the excitement. Because from day one, when something is put out there, people are going to begin to ask you, what's it going to look like? What, you know, I have these ideas, or I have this idea, and everybody wants to know what the final option that has been selected is going to look like. And most often, the report is done in phases. Your projects will be done in phases, and there are images for each of the phases. And you can send them out in this variety of methods, and any others that you can possibly think of. Several years ago, when we used to do the hand models, someone would physically build a model. We had a sister at an all-girls high school who put the model in the back of her car and drove all around New England to alumni to show them what it was going to look like. This was prior to the technology that we have available to us today, and it was very effective, and she was very dedicated. I want to show you some of the images, and these are for different phases of different master plans. This particular one is an addition in the yellow on the left. It was the beginning phases, the beginning stage of the process, but it showed to the community the basics of what was going to happen. There's an addition, and there is also a new track. As that project progressed, this rendering was produced. That is the same project, and that was shared. This is a different school, a phase where the lobby is renovated, and you can see the existing, or the former lobby up there. And there are a lot of things that you can do in the phases that do not take a lot of resources, but really can increase the overall image of what the space looks like. A renovated science lab. This is a larger project with a new chapel and an educational wing on the right, currently under construction. This is a 3D animated video sent out via email, put on the website, and gives donors a clear picture of the overall addition. There were also videos that were animations that were created for the interior spaces. They walk down the hall, walk into a science lab, turn around, view all the areas of it, and walk back out. But very effective in communicating to donors and to your community what is going to happen and what the plan is.
And all of those elements work towards implementing the plan. I mean, the whole purpose of this master plan is so that you can move forward, so that you can advance your school, so you can have that renovation and construction project move forward, and your architect will be working with you as well as the fundraising consultant to begin the process of securing the financing, securing those donors. Then your architect would be preparing the design documents for the solution and work with contractors to solicit the bids and move forward with the construction and renovation project. And we frequently see multi-phase projects which begin with phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. And I'm going to show you quickly show you one case study which had some challenges. This was a 1960s building. Science labs were outdated, needed new windows, did not have a track. It used the former convent for an art program and administrative staff. And the student population, the enrollment was growing, which was a very, very good challenge to have. And if you move forward, Tamia, this shows the various phases that were programmed in. Phase 1, I'm pleased to say that phase 1 and phase 2, okay, which was the addition and then the renovation of the former science areas, are well underway and will be occupied in a matter of weeks. And I think we have some photos coming up. These were documents that were produced during the master plan phase and during the fundraising stage, generating interest and fundraising, all very, very successful. This is the project that, these were about 3 weeks ago, these photographs were taken. This is a science wing, science and math, and there's a computer lab integrated as well. And what's next? Oh, I guess we're at the end. So we're looking for questions from any of you, and I really want to thank you for joining us this evening. We're here to act as a resource for you. So I think
Yes, we do have a few questions that have come in. One is in regard to the steering committee. Someone would like to know if you, with some of those expertise in the school community, would it be a good idea to engage some of those people on a volunteer basis, or do you recommend having someone kind of with a fresh eye to come from the outside in to do some of those assessments?
But what you want is a group of people that you know are really dedicated and are going to stay with the process and make that commitment, that they really have a vision for the future and truly want to improve the school, and you know that they can look at the big picture. So don't be overly concerned about them working in a volunteer capacity, but a good chunk of the people are going to be directly connected. So from the board, you definitely need someone from the board. You need someone from the school administration.
And if you're going to involve others, my recommendation is that you look for people who are forward-thinking, who are going to look at the big picture. I think those types of individuals are going to be really beneficial on your steering committee.
And what should the working relationship be between the school improvement plan and the campus master plan? Should they be developed at the same time? Should one inform the other? What is your recommendation for that?
Well, I think the school improvement plan, if you want to call it a strategic plan, I think that informs the master plan. In other words, I see that initial planning tool being a lot of the visioning. What do we want to be? Where do we, how can we improve from an educational perspective, from a mission perspective? And that will guide part of that vision for the master planning process.
Thank you. And what are some?
Yeah, I agree, Stephen, and that's what it is really looking at that interrelationship, recalling that slide that you were looking at a pie chart. And there is a big picture with your strategic plan or your school plan, and one of the components within that is your facility improvement, or looking at how does the facility support teaching and learning, and that will be that component within. And then you core in and you start looking at that particular piece, and that's your master planning.
Thank you. What are some of the most common sort of hidden or forgotten considerations with campus master planning, things people don't typically think about?
Well, I've seen schools that head in a direction because a particular donor may come along, or they may perceive an issue, but I sometimes see them move forward without really doing the educational planning, and not analyzing the course load that they're offering, and not being very visionary with respect to what's needed in the future. I also see others who may focus only on that, but then forget about the existing facilities and what needs to be done and budgeted to maintain those. It wants to be comprehensive, so I think that that's probably the key.
And from my perspective, I think what happens occasionally is that it's forgotten how important it is to involve the school community at large and to have their support for the master plan.
Or in some cases, not involve that financial fundraiser.
Oh, true.
And then get to the end of the master plan and realize, oh gosh, this is really what we need, but we can't raise that much money.
Or we don't know if we can raise that much money.
Exactly.
So can you give some insight on some ways that schools can sort of increase engagement and build support for some of their proposed changes with the community?
Yes, I think, Tam, you want to talk about the the
Well,
public
sure.
meetings and the
Right, and
invites and
we touched on it a bit
workshops.
throughout the presentation, but engaging the community from day one, letting them know that the master plan is going to happen, letting them know what a master plan is, why you believe it's needed, allowing them to ask questions and have it be a two-way street as far as conversation, and responding to any concerns or potential negative opinions that are out there really helps alleviate any naysayers that there may be out there. It's just a constant communication, constant back and forth. The leadership really needs to be very open and transparent, and potentially one-on-one conversations.
You know, one thing that I've noticed too is I've seen this be very effective for schools. Make a big deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Make a big deal out of the fact that you're engaging in this process. Make sure the local papers, local newspapers or radio advertising, they know that your school is looking to the future. That can be a big boon in and of itself for enrollment. Just letting the public know, hey, we're not resting on our laurels. We're moving forward. We're engaging in a long-range master plan to improve our facility and to improve our educational process and our school overall.
Yep.
Right. And that's the whole thing. It comes that you're ready for a paradigm shift. You're ready to be able to say, we're no longer going to tolerate actions based on limitations. We are changing now, and it's actions based on our vision. So get yourself to a place where you can do that. You're not alone. You need a broader base, but start sharing that conversation, and then you're well on your way.
Very good. And one final question from the audience. How long does creating a solid campus master plan take?
Well, I recommend that 6 months be devoted as an appropriate starting point, and really depending on how much involvement you can get in the school from the school community, how long it may take. I've rarely seen it be less than 6 months. I do recall one project we worked on that was fast-tracked and completed in about 4 months. Then there are others that are driven by the school that have taken as much as 8, 10, or 12 months. It is a process, and it's not something that you do overnight, but with the right team, having the right architectural consultants on board, having the financial fundraising consultants on board, and going through the process does take a good 6 months.
Very good. Well, that is the conclusion of our questions from the audience. Did you have any parting words for our attendees this evening before we wrap up?
I'd just like to thank you and say you can do it. It can be done. It's very achievable. As Catholic educators, we need to do this, and we can do it. So go do it.
And we want to wish you the very best in the new school year. Give it your all, and thank you for all that you give to the children that you have. And it's a noble effort that you're in, and God love all of you.
Thank you all very much for attending.
And thank you. Before we conclude today's webinar, I invite all of you to visit our website at ncea.org to see listing both for upcoming webinars and professional development activities throughout the year. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening, and thank you, Stephen, Jack, and Tamara, for all that you've shared with us. As a reminder, we will be sending you this recorded webinar and the presentation slides and a certificate of attendance via email within the next 5 business days. Thank you again, and may you enjoy a blessed evening.